Roger Williams University is hosting a crisis management seminar on May 3rd at their Providence campus. Crises, whether a natural disaster, cyber attack, or financial instability, can have severe repercussions if not handled properly. This is where crisis management plays a pivotal role. Join Roger Williams MBA students and expert speakers to learn how to prepare for the unexpected. The program is totally free and open to the public. You can register online at rwu.edu/events/crisis-management-symposium.
This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
All right, so the countdown to Election Day is now even closer, obviously, than it was before as time moves forward, generally speaking. Of course, early voting is underway. And look, things are shaping up in a really interesting way. There's a lot of really compelling races that we've been talking about of course, in the Congress District 2 race. I mean, that's a national race at this point. Even in the governor's race where, there's still a lot of buzz there. Lieutenant governor, can Aaron Guckayan make a move and sort of be somewhat of a surprise sleeper victor for the Republicans? What about James Lathrop in the treasurer's race? Can he topple James Diosa? So there's a lot on the table, and we've been looking at this from so many different perspectives. Of course, thanks to all of you who joined me for the debates on WPRO over the past week. You can hear those anytime at 997wpro.com. Just click on the Election Central tab or follow me on Twitter at Bill Bartholomew, where I've posted links to them. But today, a really kind of like we get a nice double shot of looking at the races and in a couple of ways. First of all, there's two guests, so I didn't even think about that, but both in the context of looking at it through the perspective of youth at the high school and the collegiate level, but also through media members and to a certain extent, independent media members who have built a brand through this election cycle in a really, really impressive way. So without further ado, I guess, why don't we have you guys introduce yourselves so that the voice is associated with a person, and we'll start with Ryan.
Well, thank you for that great introduction, Bill. And I have to take this opportunity to also commend you for all of your great work that you have been doing with the debates and, of course, the radio and podcast stuff and along with your music. But my name is Ryan Lukowicz. I am 16 years old and a junior at North Kingstown High School. I have enjoyed politics and was the first blind page at the Rhode Island State House this past legislative session. So that was a blast. So not only do I enjoy the General Assembly happenings, and I try to follow those as closely as possible, but, it's become my passion to inform the general public and particularly my family and friends over these past several months about, okay, who's on the ballot, and let's learn more about them, and where do they stand on issues that people you care about, right? Because it's all about the individual, and that's obviously how elections and democracy should work. So my goal is just to get more people, especially those in in my age group, as well as with disabilities in general, to be more politically engaged.
And you've done a very good job through your excellent podcast, which people can find. Just search for Behind the Candidates wherever you get podcasts, wherever you're listening to Bartholomew Town right now, you'll find it there. Ray, if you want to introduce yourself.
Absolutely, Bill. I want to thank you so much for having me on. A longtime listener of the podcast, and I'm a very big fan of the podcast, so it's an honor to be on as a guest. Hi, everybody that's listening and or watching. My name is Raymond Baccari. I'm currently a junior media communication major at Rhode Island College, and I'm also editor-in-chief of our student-run newspaper on campus called The Anchor. And I also host a political interview show on YouTube called Reality TV, which is spelled RAY-ALITY TV, where, like Ryan, I also interview the 2022 candidates, those in the world of local media, with the similar goals as Ryan, is to increase awareness around who's running and where they stand on the key issues.
Well, thank you both again for being here, and excellent work throughout the course of not only this campaign, but just in general. It's been really fun to watch each of you grow your audience, but more importantly, the work itself has just been really profound in terms of the growth that I've seen from both of you, and it's really fun to have that. So, all right, let's talk politics. There's nothing more exciting for people like us than that. Well, I mean, it's at least tied. We'll put it that way for top of the list. So let's stay in state here in the sense of looking at statewide offices right now. The governor's race. We had the debate yesterday on WPRO, and look, Ashley Kalus, the Republican nominee, has done everything she can really to paint Governor McKee as some kind of, bumbling, corrupt, incompetent outsider, or insider, and she herself as an outsider. And the McKee campaign is saying, well, wait a minute, who is Ashley Kalus? She showed up here a year ago. We don't really know who she is anyway. Why should anybody believe that she's qualified for any office here in Rhode Island? Ray, you moderated, along with my friends Ian Donis and Patrick Anderson, a debate at Rhode Island College I guess it was a couple of weeks ago now. Your takeaways right now, as we look at, we're a week away from Election Day. This time next week, we'll be getting ready for our election night coverage. What are you looking for here in the home stretch in this race?
When it comes from the Kalus campaign, you're definitely going to see a lot more aggressive approaches and advertisements. There's quite a bit of negative ads going on out there. You're also seeing that she's hosting a lot more earned media events, picking up endorsements. She had a rally recently where she had launched the Democrats or Ashley Coalition. So it's mainly for her side, getting out the vote, trying to get them as many as last second votes as possible. She had a rally in Providence recently with members of the community that focused on having safe streets and the goal of that. With Governor McKee, it's more so just holding the ground, holding the line, just keeping his base of support. Because with Kalus's campaign, she's running a statewide race, which is going to be a little more of an uphill battle than, say, Mayor Fung in CD2, for example, where that's the more western part of the state that's more conservative leaning. So it's just a combination of Kalus trying to get more turnout and as much votes as possible, going negative as much as possible, and getting those punchlines in at the debates. I'm noticing that quite a bit, just to kind of, as you say, paint him as the insider and say, I'm not from here, but I'm the outsider and I could bring in this perspective that's a lot different.
Right. She in CD2, the western, for the most part, western portion of the state, is actually polling somewhat close to neck and neck with Governor McKee. But when you zoom out to a statewide lens looking at CD1, it's, as of right now, at least the public facing polls show that there's about a 10% margin between Kalus and McKee, with McKee out front. But she says she's got internal polls that could potentially put her closer to Dan McKee. I wonder if she'll be able to build that coalition of Republicans, independents, low information voters that are saying, hey, wait a minute, I like the way she sounds or the way she looks, or she's someone different. What are you hearing on campus and from people in the college audience that are looking at this race, that are engaged at any level, either in that sort of, hyper engaged or just passively engaged?
Yeah, how she does in CD1, which is where more of the votes are, with areas like Pawtucket, Providence, just all those areas where there's more votes. I'm really interested to see how she performs there. I think it's definitely going to be within single digits. I don't think it's going to be 15-point victory. It's going to be a lot closer than we think. In terms of what I'm hearing on campus, I'm not really hearing as much buzz around the governor's race, but I am also hearing the passion about issues such as abortion rights. The economy is a big one, and I can say this election cycle, there's more youth and people in my age group. I'm 21 for those listening. People in my age group in the college level are definitely paying more attention to politics.
Ryan, what about you as we look towards the home stretch here for the governor's race? What are you looking for, and what are you hearing either inside of the high school level, or even just of your audience with your podcast?
So it's interesting you bring that up, because we had a very comprehensive 2-day event last week where kids always went down during their history class or any other period they could, or their teacher wanted them to watch. Basically, candidates from every office come in, and you could ask a question, and they would answer it. It was very informative, and the recordings will be out later in the week, so I'll share those. And I was able to go to the gubernatorial race, and it was interesting to hear feedback from some of my friends. I think abortion is certainly a big issue for many women in my age group as they look ahead to what could be coming years down the line if Roe v. Wade, obviously now it's overturned, but and we're okay in Rhode Island. But if there were to be a national ban, people were very upset with Kalis's position on that. But what I found overall is that it's kind of definitely lower energy compared to, say, the congressional district or some of the local races, because Kalis is maybe a little bit more Republican or conservative than my age group prefers overall. And that's a very generalized statement. But, I think that McKee is also older and, potentially out of touch with the youth, or at least that's what some say. So that was interesting. In my own opinion, I think that Raymond is absolutely right that this is going to be close, and overall Republicans will do better even in Rhode Island just because of the national environment. There's no doubt that independent voters may look at how things are going in Washington and say, hey, all of the Democrats are in power. And as a result, we're not as a result, but we're paying more for things like gas, regardless if that is an actual effect of President Biden and his counterparts. Is a conversation for another day, but that definitely trickles down, even into, I think, the General Assembly races. So it's a tough gubernatorial race. I think McKee and Kalis both have very good arguments, because McKee his administration is under FBI investigation, and Kalis not being from here is definitely a kind of a non-starter, I think, for some people. I've noticed that is a big theme, as it was even for Sarah Morgenthau in the Democratic congressional primary.
Right, where people were like, have you lived here more than just occasional summers and so on and so forth? And yeah, look, there's a lot of retail politics that go into the notion of you can bump into X candidate or X elected official at the grocery store or something like that. And when you're not from here, that is obviously impossible except for a short window of time. So some of that face-to-face relationship building goes away. Let's talk about the congressional race. Look, this is a national race. I have a friend who works for one of the major networks on a national basis, and he texted me. He was out in Arizona, and he texted me yesterday, and he was like, do you really think Fung is going to win this thing? Do you think there's any chance that Rhode Island's going to have a Republican? Because if you think so, we might want to send some correspondents out there immediately, because this is a national story. We got a lot of feedback from the debate that I did on WPRO in this race that came from outside of Rhode Island. It was kind of surprising, the amount of just random people on Twitter that said, hey, I listened to this. I'm a Republican national person of some kind, whether officially or unofficially. And we think Fung's going to pull this off. We even heard Chris Christie say that over the weekend on one of the morning shows. At the same time, Seth Magazine are very confident at this point and really has boxed Alan Fung into a corner when it comes to Social Security. That's an issue where Alan Fung says he's not going to cut Social Security, but a vote for Kevin McCarthy as Speaker might indicate to many that changes to Social Security are coming down the line. So for even my demographic, but certainly yours, we're not really thinking too much about Social Security. So I wonder what really is impacting this race from your lens. And Ray, you've done a great job in general of just kind of overviewing this stuff, but what are you hearing and what are you looking for in the closing stretch here of the Congressional District 2 race?
Yeah, there's a couple of factors. So one, to your point, this race is getting a lot of national attention. Mayor Fung has been on Fox like 3 or 4 times. I don't know if it was today or the other day, they were showing how New England might have not only 1 but 2 Republicans, because there's a Republican in Connecticut that might flip a House seat. So the energy is definitely there. So the national environment is one factor that's definitely helping Mayor Fung. the overall shape of the district and where it is in the state. That's going to help Mayor Fung. He's very popular. He's former mayor of Cranston, so he's going to drive up the numbers in Cranston. He's definitely going to max out the areas like Gloucester, Burrowville. I'm looking forward to finding out how he's going to do in Warwick, which is another big vote-getting part of the district, as well as Johnston. And just there are other factors and issues that are shaping the race the way it is the economy. Whether we believe it or not, people vote with their wallets, and Mayor Fung is focused on the kitchen table issues, like the high inflation, the high gas prices, the high food prices at the grocery store. I'm almost noticing a similarity between the 2021 Virginia governor's race and this race, where Magaziner is more nationalizing it and trying to draw Fung to national Republicans, while Mayor Fung is focusing on, being local. Hey, I was the former mayor of Cranston. Here's what I did. I'm focusing on the economy. I'm focusing on law and order. I'm focusing on jobs, focusing on lowering the energy costs. That's pretty much what I've been getting from this race so far. And one other thing I want to note is I'm interested in seeing how Bill Gilbert will do, because he's the moderate party candidate for those listening, and he's been polling at 4 to 5%. I don't know if that's when people hear moderate, they're like, oh, I'm a moderate, I'm going to support Gilbert. And I don't know if he's going to take votes away from Fung or even take votes away from Magaziner. That's another wild card as well.
Yeah, that definitely is Bill Gilbert, who ran for governor in 2018, also under the moderate banner as an independent technically. But it's going to be interesting. And you wonder, he doesn't have a ton of name recognition. People are inside the polling place, and perhaps they don't like either candidate. Do they see the moderate candidate and think, all right, is this just some kind of like Diet Coke libertarian? Or do they actually think, yeah, this guy's down the middle. I'm going to at least use him as a protest vote. My instinct would be he would pull away somewhat equally from each candidate. But you're right. The latest public-facing poll came from the Democratic Congressional Committee, and they had it at 48% for both Fung and Magaziner.
And it didn't have Gilbert in that poll either, which was very interesting. I also interned at a local news station, and I had an assignment of writing a news article about that poll. And I talked with a political science professor, which that was one of the main things to think about. You didn't poll the third party candidate and they're tied. What's it going to look like if you included his numbers? Exactly.
That's going to be fascinating. And look, it's a really, really fascinating race. And both candidates have, unlike the governor's race, does it really matter if you're from CD2 or CD1 in Rhode Island? I don't know how many people would really make a big fuss about the fact that Seth Magaziner, moved from Providence's east side to Edgewood. Basically you can kick a football from point A to point B there. But hey, maybe that is a factor. And as abortion dwindles as a primary concern in most national, even some local polling, it is going to be interesting to see what are the issues that people vote on. Is it just, in fact, the first question I asked in our debate that we did last Friday was, how much does this race come down to personality versus policy? And Ryan, I wonder, the personality of Alan Fung, the personality of Seth Magaziner, in addition to their policies, what are you hearing? What are you looking for in the closing stretch as we approach Election Day in literally 8 days or 7 days, I guess, right? Yeah, here we are, 7 days.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. I think it's going to come down to the independent voters, and it sounds silly, but with gas prices going up again, I think that has a direct correlation to this congressional race potentially. And if they were to suddenly go down, this weekend, a few days before, I think it has an impact. I think that the general perception is that Democrats are in control, and the cost of living is not good. And we saw in polls how that is the number one issue for people. And you're absolutely right that it's something that impacts people on a day-to-day basis. And Alan Fung has done a really good job of focusing on it. And it does come down to personality in some cases. And I've met both gentlemen, and I think they both come off as very kind, nice people who are well-intentioned. And obviously you have to be a moderate Republican to, kind of do well here in New England. If you look at, Charlie Baker or even Susan Collins in Maine, you can't be, Ron DeSantis and win in Rhode Island. So Fung has to be that way. I just wonder how much Magaziner nationalizing the race is going to have an impact on those day-to-day voters, considering Trump, although he's still looming over the Republican Party, it was the past, and Biden is now the president, and the cost of living impacts every single person, right? I've made this point to a lot of people that abortion is particularly relevant to young women, and that's great, and sort of the people who care about them maybe, but this is something that you can't catch a break from, right? You go to the grocery store, you see the price of meats and whatever else going up, and that's why Fung is doing so well, and I think he's done a great job running on the economy.
Yeah, well, there's no question about that, and again, you can dig deep into the issues on a more substantial basis, but I wonder just how much. And the Boston Globe in their endorsement for Seth Magaziner noted that, look, no matter what issues of economy or anything else for that matter, a vote for Alan Fung is a step towards a Kevin McCarthy speakership, and a Kevin McCarthy who is at the end of the day, going to be known, and his brand is tied to election denial. So I just wonder how much that will matter to people versus hey, Alan Fung, he's a nice guy, and here he is, at some Cranston West football game, high-fiving people, and, the superhero in khakis, guzzling coffee syrup or whatever it is, versus Seth Magaziner, who everybody knows from being general treasurer and so on and so forth. But does it really matter to people? At the end of the day, that policy decision, the major decision of whether or not to endorse, so to speak. And again, who knows how it's all going to play out nationally, right? There could be like an unbelievably shocking election day where a bunch of entrenched Republicans suddenly lose. But more than likely, a vote for Fung is moving towards, it's not going to make a difference, but it's probably going to move us towards the Kevin McCarthy speakership. I want to shift to something that both of you guys have done a really good job on, and that's hyper local races. I mean, I'm not talking dog catcher and things like that, but you've both done a great job and really filled a void that when we see less and less local newspapers and less ability for the Journal or anybody for that matter to cover local races, you guys have been just like such an important asset to the community. What local races, General Assembly, whatever it may be, school committee could be a factor here. What are you seeing on the local level that is of interest, Ray?
Yeah, and I really appreciate you saying that about Ryan and I, because we've tried really hard to cover as much General Assembly. I had a whole mini series on my show dedicated to covering Providence City Council. I live in the city, so that was very important to me, especially since you had the council president being term limited. You had a new mayor guaranteed, so that was very important. As there's a lot of issues like education, fixing these cracked roads, basic city services, things along those lines. But in terms of your question, there's a few local races that I'm interested in seeing how it turns out. There's a couple General Assembly races in specific. So on the Senate side, I'm interested in seeing what happens with Senate 38, which is Senate Minority Leader Dennis Algier's seat. He's retiring, and it's a very blue seat, but he was a very, very moderate Republican, so he was able to hold that for a long time. I'm curious how it's going to go, because there's also an independent candidate who's quite known in the area. I think he's a town councilman. Cook is his last name, I believe. Cook Jr. I forget his full name, but Victoria Gu is Democrat running against Weston Place, the Republican. It's likely leaning toward Victoria Gu, so I think she'll win that. Senate District 29, that's an open seat. Senate Majority Leader Michael McCaffrey retired, and that race is seeing Democrat Jennifer Rourke, who is one of the political cooperative candidates, run up against Republican Anthony DeLuca. It's a conservative leaning part of Warwick. I believe somebody did like the mapping of it and looked like it was a Trump +1 district. So who knows? Are they going to vote for Jennifer Rourke, who's more left-leaning than McCaffrey was, or are they going to give it to the Republicans? Then on the House side, there's seats I'm very interested in too. House District 30 between Amanda Blau and the state rep. Ryan, you know that district better than I do. Who's the rep? Caldwell?
Yes, Justine Caldwell.
Yep, exactly.
Rep Caldwell versus Amanda Blau. That's going to be interesting because it's in East Greenwich, which is one of those areas that was red for a long time and is shifted blue dramatically as the suburbs have shifted blue over the years. But I've heard a lot of energy from Amanda Blau's campaign. House, I think it's 53 between Bernard Hawkins and Brian Rea, the 2020 rematch. Rea narrowly lost. Mail ballots put Rep. Hawkins over the edge. That's going to be interesting. And there's another House seat. House 21. I want to see how that's going to go because you have a moderate Democrat, Camille Vella-Wilkinson, facing Marie Hopkins. I think that's more of a sleeper one. People are saying that Rep. Vella-Wilkinson is safe. I think Marie Hopkins could potentially pull off an upset or do a lot better than we think.
Yeah, and with Marie Hopkins, it's like, you wonder how her campaign is translating to the average everyday person on Twitter. In an event like you and I were at, Ray, last Tuesday, Ashley Kalis's Democrats for Kalis event, whatever it was, in some truck garage filled with they were grilling inside. So by the way, so I don't know if I was thinking clearly in any way, shape, or form because of the smoke inhalation, but that's besides the point. You wonder if like the inside baseball, the phone booth that we're all in here, we see Marie Hopkins as having all this energy. If that really translates to Joe and Mary Public, so to speak, it'll be fascinating to watch that. Ryan, you've had some debates. I mean, you've been all over this as well. What are you looking at when it comes to General Assembly and local races?
Yeah, I mean, being a page certainly opened my eyes, so to speak, to not only how these people vote, but also their personalities. And I think it's not talked about enough how the accessibility of these senators and representatives matter so much, right? Because a lot of those bills and policies really impact people more than stuff that's going on in Washington, maybe with the president. That's not to minimize it, but these bills are really important, and I don't think enough people are paying attention to the General Assembly. So it's something I have tried to cover, and you're right. Raymond and I hosted a debate for my Senate district, District 35, which is between Bridget Valverde and Doreen Costa. Valverde is the incumbent, and Costa is a former rep who is challenging her. But it's been really interesting for me because we've had a lot of dicey stuff going on in our town, and it's truly a purple town, NK. You have some really conservative folks, and then there are also progressive pockets. So we've had our own stuff going on with the school committee and town council. But I think it's so important for people to, learn about, okay, who's their senator and rep? How do you get in touch with them? And I agree with Raymond. I think he highlighted 5 really interesting races to watch. But every Republican challenging a Democrat this go around in the 2nd Congressional District really has more of a shot than usual because Alan Fung could have an impact on those down ballot races. If you're someone who is motivated to go out and vote for him, maybe you don't usually care as much, and then you just continue to vote R down the ballot. So a lot of these districts that you would consider safe Ds may now be, lean Democrat, just because I do think that's a factor. And, the House District 21 in Warwick is really fascinating. Camille Vella-Wilkinson is a moderate Republican, a moderate Democrat. Marie Hopkins is the Republican. And I've heard that, Rep. Vella-Wilkinson, she's done some good stuff, especially around veterans issues, but apparently she hasn't door knocked. I've been hearing that. So it could just come down to outreach and messaging. I don't know, which I think is why Marie Hopkins seems to have so much energy. House District 30 is a good one. Amanda Blau is well funded. She's also more of a moderate Republican. And East Greenwich is another one of those purple areas. And I should note that Rep. Caldwell sponsored that high capacity magazine bill, which may or may not end up becoming unconstitutional, if it goes through the court process, kind of like the truck tolls did. So in such a purple leaning area, I don't know how that will go over. So that's kind of the House stuff. And I think the one in Smithfield, and I believe it's Gloucester, is interesting just because Bernie Hawkins seems like a nice guy. I don't know, the ins and outs of that area very well, but I've heard he's not the most accessible. And obviously, Brian Rea in the last go around came within a couple of hundred votes. And then Victoria Gu should win in Senate District 38. I would peg that as kind of lean D. And I think the other one that will likely flip is House District 36, where Tina Spears, from what I've heard, is running a great campaign. And she's very well organized. So a lot of times it's beyond the policy, and it comes down to, how serious are these candidates taking the races? How much money have they raised, and what's their outreach like in those local communities? And a lot of times that's hard to tell if you don't live near one or have a friend who is interested in that.
It's very true, Ryan. One thing I just want to add real quick, Bill, because I'm glad you brought that up, Ryan. A lot of these, all politics is local, to simply put, but it really boils down to walking your district, knocking the doors, now more so than ever, getting those mail ballots, and ballot harvesting is legal. So a lot of the campaigns are getting a strong mail ballot game going on. One race that actually shows how important just walking your district is, regardless of you're the underdog or not, happened in the primary. My House district, I'm in House 9, which is between Rep. Williams, who was there for 30 years, and Enrique Sanchez, who was to the left of her policy-wise, and he walked that district, had to be at least 4 to 5 times, because he came to my house at least 5 times alone. So it really boils down to, for your listeners, if you're ever wondering how important a General Assembly, or what's the fundamentals to win a General Assembly race, just keep knocking doors. I always compare it to when Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez first ran for Congress against a 30-year incumbent. She told the story about how she knocked on so many doors that she had holes in the bottom of her shoes. They're now in a museum, I believe, from a story I read. But yeah, it's you just got to keep knocking on the doors. Obviously, there's going to be districts that are almost impossible to win. Like if you're a Republican running in my House district, it's going to be virtually impossible. But just knocking the doors for those competitive districts, like House 42, for example, that's a district that's very pro-Trump, but it has a Democrat in the seat right now.
Yeah, it comes down to the hustle. And speaking of hustle, you guys just provided the best General Assembly analysis that I've heard, period. So kudos, for real.
Thank you.
Because
Thank you.
Yeah, that's that's outstanding work you guys have been doing. You guys should know that. And if you don't, because I think you do, but if you don't, then that's high level. All right, so we're gonna have a little bit of fun here. I just thought of this now. This may actually be something that I do on future episodes. So we got 5 state officers. We've got governor. Something tells me Paul Ryan is probably not going to win the election. So we'll just narrow it down to the 2, or Liza Gizzarelli, or what's his name?
Zach Horwitz.
Zach Horwitz.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm glad you know that.
North Kingstown graduate.
Is that right? Oh, that makes sense. I can see that. You guys are very well engaged with
youngest candidate ever on the ballot, like in history, youngest candidate ever.
I have to be clear. I think it's actually pretty impressive to get the signature. I've followed candidates around. Not so much this year. In 2018, I spent time following potential candidates or candidates around, trying to collect signatures, and I was like, wow, this is just it's just something I don't want to ever have to do for myself. Put it that way. So they're on the ballot, but let's look now at and there are other independent candidates in various races, but Republican, Democrat. So, governor, we've got Republican challenger Ashley Kalus, incumbent governor Dan McKee, obviously the Democrat. Lieutenant governor, we've got Republican challenger Aaron Guckian, incumbent Democrat Sabina Matos. Secretary of State, we've got 2 new figures. We've got Pat Cortellesa, the Republican, not Anthony Moore, he's running in Massachusetts. Greg Amore is the Democratic nominee there. Treasurer, we obviously have a really interesting matchup, Republican James Lathrop against Democrat James Diosa. Attorney General, we have Chaz Kalinda, the Republican. He's taking on incumbent Attorney General Peter Norno. So that's 5 state officers. I'm going to ask each of you, over under, give me a number of Republicans that will win a state office in 2022. We'll start with Ray.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. You're really putting me in a corner here, Bill. I don't want to give an outright number, but I will say 2 races to watch are lieutenant governor and treasurer for sure, and governor as well, obviously, because it's the top statewide office. But really pay attention to treasurer and lieutenant governor, because Aaron Gukian's running a great campaign. He was very aggressive at the debate. He had 2 well-done ads come out recently, and I've seen outside monies coming in to help Lieutenant Governor Matos.
Yep.
And she also doesn't have as much of a statewide name recognition. She's known in Providence because she was council president, but that's going to be a really interesting one. I think that's going to be closer than we're writing it off to be. Treasurer Jim Lathrop, he got a big union endorsement not too long ago, and there's quite a few negative stories being in the news cycles about Mayor Diosa. That one's going to be closer. I don't want to give a number because that's a tough thing to do. But treasurer and lieutenant governor is the must watch, in my opinion, alongside governor.
Ryan?
Well, I was wondering where that was going after such a comprehensive analysis of all of the statewide office holders, and it's so hard to tell. I will say, I think Matos and Diosa certainly had tough primaries. So I think Democrats will support Democrats, but there definitely could be some people who are like, well, my candidate didn't win, so I'm just gonna, I don't know, if at times it'll come down to personality. I think Lathrop and Gukian certainly have a higher chance. I think all Republicans do in Rhode Island this go around, and I think a couple of them get really close. I still think we're a blue state though, Bill. So I think it's not going to be it's not going to be comfortable for any of these Democrats, but I do think they all end up winning in the end, just because I think in every case they have a higher name recognition. If you go down the slate of Republicans, I don't think you really had heard of any of the 5 maybe before this year. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Kalenda maybe, but yeah, you're generally speaking, I think you're right there outside of small pockets, right?
Yeah, so I think if you had an Alan Fung run, for one of those offices, maybe a Blake Filippi, a Jessica De La Cruz, once they, become a little bit older and continue to build on the name recognition that they have, because obviously it's not a lot, but it was more than these statewide office holders or statewide candidates have, and I think you kind of have to climb up the ranks. It's the Republican Party is taking a very different approach with these new candidates, which is interesting, and it's they're fresh, and I totally can understand why they would want to do that. But in a way, it's almost like I think it's better if you are a mayor or a legislator and even a town council person, because that's just how politics is. You slowly have to gain that. So I don't mean to be a bummer, but I'm not taking it. I'm not going to make any hot takes, and I do think all of the Democrats end up winning, but again by single digits in most cases.
This is also something that's fluid and can change from hour to hour. I don't even have any interest or engagement whatsoever in sports betting or anything like that. I don't know anything about it. But all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is a fascinating way to look at it because I've been bombarded with ads about this stuff. So I'm going to take right now, my number is 1.5 and I'm going to go under. So as if to say that 0 or 1 Republican will win in a statewide office. And I'm not saying that that's going to be the case all the way through election day. But as of right now, at this moment, this snapshot in time, as Joe Fleming would say, I am looking at it like there's a chance, I think a very good chance. There's one office I have in mind. I won't say what it is, but I do think that 1 Republican could win, but I also think 0 Republicans could win. I don't think it'll be a clean sweep. But again, that can change. All right, last couple of minutes here. I just want to, what's fascinating is media is changing so much right now. I got into this game after being a longtime observer, obsessor, completely passionate about it. I got into this game in 2018, basically, as a podcaster, and then eventually in television and radio and so on and so forth. And, media is changing and consumption habits are changing dramatically. And I wonder, you guys are on the forefront of, I would say, you think about who are the big names in the, for lack of a better term, the youth right now, of Rhode Island media. At one point, you would have said Dan McGowan, you would have said Ted Nesi. Right now, I think you guys are there. So as you enter into a point where your careers are starting to take shape, what do you think is the biggest change we're going to see in media over the next 5 to 10 years that you guys will have a unique perspective and ability to execute on? Because even us millennials are, we're pretty good. McGowan with Roadmap. I'm trying to do the podcast. Nisi's doing his thing. Like, I think we're riding the wave. I don't think we're dinosaurs yet, but and I'm not looking for state secrets to poach either. I'm just wondering, what do you guys see as the big change in terms of how people will consume media in the next 5 to 10 years, starting with Ray?
Definitely, it's going to be more on the internet and on social media. That's essentially a given. I'm not sure how big mediums like radio are going to do 5 years from now, but it's going more towards social media. I think short form content is going to be a lot bigger. And I've noticed that whenever I do, say, for example, a 40-minute interview, I put timestamps and try to clip important moments to have in a vault if I want to post on Twitter, because no one's going to watch a 40-minute interview in one sitting, and it's going to be tough to have somebody watch that whole hour of news on TV. So short form content, social media oriented. And I think that's also going to be a strength too, because we have a lot more access to technology that's going to make our life easier. If we do on the spot interview, we could just pull out our phone and record right there, and we're a single party consent state, so we could do that too legally.
That's right.
And that's pretty much where I say it's heading.
Ryan?
Yeah, I agree with that. And just to add on to it, I think people want news when they want it right away. I don't think people are, it's not like the old days where, you're sitting down eating dinner and just, kind of waiting for the 6 o'clock news. For some people it still is. But I think you've seen a change over time that people want more stuff right away, on demand, on their own schedules, because everyone is different. And I think that's why things like podcasting have taken off, right? Because it's not live. You can listen to it whenever you want. It's flexible. You can start and stop it, right? And that, can kind of apply to TV shows too, right? Watching it live means, you have to sit there. You have less control over your own life and with other things you do. Whereas, if I want to pause a podcast, if I want to go get a snack or do whatever, I can, and I can come back to it and it'll still be there, right? It's not like I'm missing anything. So I think people want stuff that's recorded, that's easy to access, and also that they can, have control over it, and they can, start it, stop it whenever they want. So, and you've seen that a little bit with, television stations now. I think we have all three in the market having a 4 p.m. newscast now, which is significant because when people come home, that's a time they want their news, or they may listen to a podcast. So I think that's going to have to be reflected, within the TV market, and providing, content whenever people want it. And of course that goes to the website and social media as well, because people can look at that whenever they want.
Completely agree. It's going to be a really fascinating situation. And my prediction is that all of that is true, and that mediums like radio and broadcast TV are going to shift. They're going to change a lot. I don't think they're going to go away as soon as a lot of people predict, because there's still a large audience of people that that want live, that want something that is shared, a shared experience. I think that's the beauty of radio, and why I'm so drawn to it is that, hey, when something's happening on WPRO, that you and 80, 100, 120,000 other people are listening to that thing in that moment and sharing that experience. that's something that on demand doesn't replicate. At the same time, radio is going to have to make some changes as well. There's no question about it in terms of how they deliver their content, and television is going to be fascinating. I don't know what the 6 o'clock news is going to look like when we get 10 years out from now. So, but hey, you guys are trailblazers, doing an amazing job. I'm so glad we were able to do this. This was tough to schedule because when we were originally going to do it before the primary, which by the way, I'm so glad we're doing it before the general instead. I got COVID, and then I'm just so glad we did this. And I thank you guys very much for making time here this evening to join me on Bartholomew Town.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it worked out great. Thanks for having us.
Exactly. Thank you for having us. It's an absolute honor to be on here.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.